There was this one lady who was flaring up and her lips were swollen. Her penicillin, her antibiotic that she was taking, she was allergic to. She couldn't speak and she was losing breath. And Juno was smart enough in that situation to be like, hold on, take a screenshot, send this to your mum. On average, it takes 9 years to be diagnosed with chronic illness and it's seeing dozens of doctors per year. People prefer speaking to an alien avatar because if you create an AI to look like a human, it's kind of uncanny valley. But then if you speak to an alien, you know it's AI, you're happy with it. Actually, I was working on building a cryptocurrency to sell marijuana.
Marshall, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
You're doing well. Welcome to No Fixed Route. We've been trying to do this for a couple of weeks, but I think between weather and work, it's kind of been tough. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So my understanding of your business is you guys are building an AI companion for people with chronic illnesses.
Yes.
Can we start by defining what chronic is? Like if my ankle hurts or has been hurting for a long time, does that count as chronic, or is there like a very strict definition of what chronic illnesses are?
Yeah, so chronic just means reoccurring. So it could be an ankle pain that you get every day. So that's just reoccurring. But when we talk about chronic disease, it's normally diseases that affect you every day. It could be from chronic pain to chronic fatigue.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the most common chronic illness out there?
Yeah, so I think there's not one. There's a lot of conditions within the chronic illness categories. I think autoimmune conditions affect over 1 billion people, and also chronic pain can affect over 1 billion people as well.
If you're living with diabetes, is that considered?
Yeah,
chronic?
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So what exactly does the product do?
Yeah, so in its current format, it's AI companion, as you mentioned, that you can speak to and have daily conversations with. And by talking to Juno, the AI companion, you receive emotional advice or medical advice, depending on what you're looking for. And in the back end, it quietly logs their symptoms, their flare-ups from the deviation from baseline. And from that, you can investigate either why your symptoms are flaring up, or perhaps if you're looking for a diagnosis, it can also help you along that journey.
And all of this is based on conversational data. You're not collecting Whoop data or some external wearable.
Yeah, so when people onboard on our platform, there's actually multiple data that we take. So we take their previous chats, we take their health profiles from their medical history, which they upload via API. We take biometric data like Whoop or Aura, etc. And then we take informations which we get from their onboarding. And beyond that, we also have this constant daily conversation that people enjoy. And then that kind of trains Juno to learn more about them and help them across their journey.
Gotcha. How sticky are your people? Like, are they coming in every single day and chatting with an AI, or do they come in only when they need something from it?
Yeah, so it depends sort of what chronic disease they have. Some people are in constant pain every day and they like to use it to look at their symptoms to see why it's getting worse, etc. So we have some users who are on it every day, maybe even a couple hours of the day. Because we also have a community feature of 50,000 people where people are chatting there constantly and they're receiving support from each other. We have other people who use it when they're in times of emotional need, and then Juno's there to support them with, I guess, insane memory system where she understands what's going on with that user, and has this previous context that they can use to truly help the user.
Yeah. You guys have had some pretty early success, and you even told me last time we spoke that you saved someone's life.
Right.
Like, tell me more about that story.
Yeah. So, we definitely have to thank AI for that. I mean, AI has an insane amount of context. You take from, doctor's records from 3 years ago to the biometric data now, and from this daily conversation that's able to, use this insane context to truly work out what's going on. There was this one lady who was flaring up and her lips were swollen, and Juno was able to link that her penicillin, her antibiotic that she was taking, she was allergic to.
And doctors did not catch that.
Doctors didn't, because she was just at home by herself and she was flaring up, her lips were swollen, she didn't know what was going on. And then she couldn't speak and she was losing breath. And Juno was smart enough in that situation to be like, hold on, take a screenshot, send this to your mum. And the mum found the daughter in extreme stress and completely swollen and allergic, and took her straight to hospital.
Yeah. In the future, Juno will be able to call an ambulance and everything.
For sure. You want Juno to be the doctor in your pocket, does everything for you, from prescribing, diagnosing, calling the ambulance. So
How far are we from doctors, at least for diagnosing and prescribing medication, becoming completely irrelevant?
I don't have an exact number of years or weeks or months, to be honest, but I think we're close. I think doctors will always be there because, administrating physical medicines or, seeing a person in real life, I think sometimes is better, because currently right now the AI doesn't understand the nuance and tone and emotion, and also the fact that some people might describe things differently, and doctors kind of have to use their nuance to understand what's going on. But I think we've already seen it with Juno. Juno has diagnosed people effectively and sufficiently. We could be there in a few months.
Got it. So I know it's a big problem in AI where it like confirms what you want to hear. It just like wants to agree with you, so on and so forth. And a doctor's, I wouldn't want to say primary job, but a huge part of their job is telling you that you don't need medication. You don't need to do something that you think you need. Is it possible to like teach the AI not to be so, like confirm everything that you're telling it? Is it a system level prompt, or is it like a fundamental thing that the AI needs to understand in order not to want to be liked by the human, therefore confirming everything that you believe?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a massive problem that we wanted to target. And we first started off about looking at how doctors have these conversations with their patients to avoid like confirmation bias and also avoid this emotional compassion that AI gives. And by doing so, we trained Juno on conversations they've had with other patients to prevent this. And also Juno's trained on motivational techniques, such as motivational theory. That means that rather than, agreeing with the person initially, you kind of let the user speak, and then you might offer a small counteraction that might differ their opinion, differ their beliefs, but doing it in a way where, you're not doing it to harm them, but doing it to suggest something else, and to make the user is maybe look in another direction and be like, okay, that seems interesting. Like maybe you're right. Yeah.
That makes sense. You guys are not using like the typical, ChatGPT plugin APIs. You guys built some kind of model by yourself. Can you walk me through what the tech stack is on the background, and how did you guys get all the data to train your model?
Yeah, so through my research at Oxford, I was looking into how people with chronic disease use social media online. And by doing so, we kind of worked out multiple interesting factors I could share. One of them is people with chronic illness are 8 times more likely to like posts which have celebration content with it. And what that means is any post that describes celebration, achievements, etc., people are more likely to like these posts. And by doing so, we train the model to include whenever they have, micro wins or any things that, might not seem crazy, we reward them with, I guess, congratulations to keep them motivated throughout their journey. We also trained, on the 1,000+ patient interviews we conducted across the last few months into how people live with chronic illness, what they've liked about the system, what they haven't liked about the system.
And you guys are conducting these interviews by yourself, like Juno's doing this, or you found a data set somewhere?
So we did it ourselves. So we spent the last, even more than a few months, probably about 6 months doing this.
And why would a patient want to talk to you?
I think the chronic illness community has definitely, I guess, been fucked up, to say the least. On average, it takes 9 years to be diagnosed with chronic illness, and it's seeing dozens of doctors per year. So a lot of people are just really happy to find people who are building for them and with them, rather than huge corporations building products that they would never use.
Got it.
So people are extremely motivated to build a product to not only help them, but the community. The community is really strong.
Okay. And then you have a chronic illness too. You said, do you use Juno every day?
Yes, I don't use it every day, mainly because I'm building 24/7, but I definitely use it in times of need. And to be honest, I was speaking to Juno about the supplements I'm taking, and she advised me to take some other supplements, and now I'm using them, and they've really helped the last few weeks. Yeah.
That makes sense. Cool. How do people with chronic illness deal with it without Juno?
Yeah, so people often rely on the communities, which we thought were extremely important. In fact, the startup I did before this was connecting people with the same chronic and rare disease, because while AI is great, talk with people with the same lived experience is often more important. We know that there's a place for both AI and people, which is kind of why we want to do both. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. Your co-founder does the marketing side.
Yes.
He's the technical side.
Yeah.
How are you, like 50,000 people, a lot of people for a company this young.
Thank you.
How are you guys getting all these people?
Yeah, so we initially started off with just TikTok educational content or founder-led content. That's definitely really helped. And then we kind of relied on our referral mechanism. We're lucky that people exist in these big communities already of thousands of people. And then people like Juno and they share it. And that's been great for our growth, but also great that we can make a product people like.
And are there insights you could share on how to acquire so many customers? What was your co-founder posting about on TikTok?
Yeah, so just generally, tips that could be useful for people with chronic illness. I mean,
was it a specific illness or
we targeted actually multiple diseases from fibromyalgia to chronic fatigue, POTS, etc.
And these are multiple TikTok accounts.
Exactly. Yeah. And then people will then see this page, they enjoy it, and then you might put Juno as the 7th tip, and people that heard it from that, and then they know that it is technically an advertisement, but you're giving such helpful content, they don't mind and they find it useful.
Okay. This is a hard one for you. Why can't people just go to ChatGPT and talk to it? Why do we need a different app for this?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. We get asked the whole time, as you can imagine. But yeah, so we built Juno to be this hyper engaged layer for people to speak to and actually enjoy speaking to. When people speak to GPT, it's like okay conversation, but the average usage time is about 5 or 6 minutes per chat. In Juno, it can be up to like 30 minutes on average, and conversation can last hours. And this is because we built Juno for the chronic illness community in mind, and we built this so we can create this longitudinal profile and not just have these discrete chats. So of course, there's that emotional compassion that we built or we perfected, but also it's then the health insights that come from these conversations. ChatGPT isn't built to produce the quality of health insights we can give people, and people can speak to Juno about their symptoms they had last week, and Juno automatically log them. So this app was built for people with chronic illness. Not only have we created this model to really provide the emotional support people need, but also more importantly, it's for the chronic illness community, and they get valuable health insights that help them across their journey.
That makes sense. Yeah. Do you think people nowadays are like more okay with talk to an AI, like seeing the text stream in our business, as I was telling you earlier, unless they ask, that they're not really aware that they're speaking to a human. They're just, speaking to an AI, and they're SMSing someone, and someone's SMSing them back. As long as all the questions are being answered, no one really cares whether it's AI or not, because the text is the core factor. When someone is dealing with a healthcare, especially like a more emotional thing, and they see the text streaming in and they know it's not human, does that impact their experience at all? Like, is it positive, negative? Are you seeing people being more okay with it? Like, what are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, so I think some people don't like AI at all, and we're really trying to show how great AI can be. I think people have used ChatGPT previously and haven't enjoyed the experience, and a lot of our users come from ChatGPT to try and find another option. Of the people who speak to Juno and enjoy speaking to Juno, we kind of experimented with different avatars that Juno can be. So a human-looking avatar or an alien avatar. People prefer to speak to alien avatar because if you create an AI to look like a human, it's kind of a bit uncanny valley. Yeah. But then if you speak to an alien, it's AI, you're happy with this AI, you're comfortable with this AI, and you're happy with the responses it gives. So we've noticed that people don't mind speaking to AI and they enjoy it, given it's an alien. And the people who don't like AI but working on it, I think there's this idea that AI is extremely bad for the environment. So kind of we're actively trying to work to create a positive impact on the environment and creating like an ethical AI solution that people can buy into and enjoy.
That makes sense. I actually had a guest on this podcast, Ryan Ben Malik. He's making robotic pets at home, and he said the same thing. Like, if you try to make a robotic pet and make it look like a dog, people are going to like it less. But if it looks like a mythical creature or a dragon or something, people are more willing to engage in it and purchase it, which is quite interesting. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You guys are in YC now.
Yeah.
How many weeks has it been?
Only 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah,
so I should be here right now. That's my partners.
You should be grinding. All right.
Yeah.
For anyone from YC watching, it actually came out. When is your pod end?
Like 2 months.
We're recording this in July of 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it's very early, but we didn't do YC, and I was wondering, what if we did? What would be different? Is there anything that you've seen so far? Maybe something you changed your mind on since starting YC?
I think we're kind of unsure of our exact business direction. I think there's this idea that as a B2C company, what's your B2B route? Get there now, make millions, do it. But, that's the advice you've been given by some people. But YC, you kind of just say, stick doing what you're doing or doing it well, and the community likes you. That B2B side will, kind of find itself. And that's good advice that we got, because now we're, building a product people actually like, and we can work out the rest later. But let's kind of create a product that everyone likes and build a community, and then, see where we go from there.
Okay.
Or like what YC say is like, speak to your users. That's the number one thing they always nailed into you, and it's true. Don't build a product you think people want, build a product people want. And that's not just from having random text conversations, it's from calling your users, having daily interaction. So while we're not hosting in-person events now, we will be in the next few months when we have more time on our plate. We do have WhatsApp groups where we speak to people constantly. People talk on group chats. We have thousands of messages per day of just our power users who enjoy the product. So every single day we're building with them, making small features, fixing small bugs to build with them and for them, rather than build for ourselves.
Got it. And these are not on Juno, they're on WhatsApp, and people are just like communicating.
WhatsApp, we call them, we FaceTime them, we're friends with them. And that's what you need.
Can you walk me through this, the science behind how you do these user interviews? Are you coming in prepared with a list of questions, or is it more like a natural thing?
So I think initially it was more scripted, but by doing so, you kind of need to for the first maybe 10, 20, 30 conversations. Then after that, you can kind of be more natural, and you what questions need to be asked, but you ask them in a way where you're having an actual conversation. It doesn't feel like a script, because it's kind of like how we're talking now. We're talking and having a normal conversation. But if you're reading from a script, it kind of feels a bit awkward. You don't really know how to react. But it's a lot easier just to have a normal conversation and see what's being said, because someone might remember that, oh, they had this bug 3 weeks ago, they didn't like it. But if you're kind of asking targeted questions, it's something more difficult.
Yeah, you got to look at them, ask open-ended questions, have them go wherever they need to. When you're having these conversations with the patients, are you talking to them about your product, or are you talking to them about something else?
Yeah, so initially we kind of warm up and just get to know them as people, kind of the experiences, and by doing so, we can kind of bond, we can learn about them, learn about why they're using Juno, kind of through their story, and kind of form that initial personal connection. So it doesn't feel like a marketing interview. And then from then we can, dive down to how they use Juno based on their experience in the story.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. You grew up in the UK.
Yeah.
And now you live here in San Francisco. How would you compare the healthcare system in the UK versus the US?
So different. Yeah.
Okay. Say more.
I mean, in the UK, private health insurance isn't really a thing. We have the NHS, which is great for us in terms of people, but hard for businesses. Because in the US, there's so many big private health insurers who aren't really looking to save costs that much because they get a bunch of money. With the UK, the government's actually looking to cut costs. It signs massive contracts that are a fraction of the cost that people want, and to actually integrate into the NHS, the National Health Service, is a lot slower, and therefore there's less innovation. But in the US, they're more likely to try products, use them, interact with them, and bring them into the community. So as a founder with a business, it's 10 times better to be here.
Got it. Do you see people with chronic illnesses get treated better in the UK versus at the US, or maybe it's better here compared to the UK? How are, for your customer base, how would you kind of compare it to?
I wouldn't say anywhere is that good, to be honest.
Okay.
I think in the UK, we have this problem where it can take months to have an appointment. Yeah. It's quite similar in the US, to be fair, but at least in the UK, anyone can afford healthcare. In the US, it's different. You have to be careful with your spending. A lot of people on disability allowance in the US, which kind of limits them to a certain amount of things they can do per day because they simply can't afford it. I think, as mentioned before, it takes 9 years on average to be diagnosed with a chronic disease. And that's simply because of mismanagement of the system. People go to too many doctors, waiting months for an appointment and not really being listened to. And, once you get a diagnosis, it doesn't really mean that it gets to be better.
Yeah.
Realistically, you might have a treatment, but most chronic diseases don't have a cure. So how can we best support patients via therapy? But, we're not doing that much in any country right now.
Well, not yet, but that's something.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Through Juno.
Awesome. We've got a minute left. We'll probably pause here and then just continue the other half. How does it feel?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
How do you think of that?
I think it was good. It's got a lot. Yeah. You went to school in Oxford.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. What's that like? Because I feel like from the US, we think it's a very prestigious school. There's Stanford, and then there's Harvard in terms of prestige.
Yeah.
And in terms of quality. And then there's Oxford. At least that's the impression that we have here.
Yeah.
Is that really the case?
I mean, I think Oxford is a very old school, and I think it definitely is Harry Potter vibes. Okay. For the average American, he was with me on my program. They was tourists the whole time, even though they're there for a whole year. They were taking pictures constantly. They had such an amazing time. But yeah, I think Oxford is an amazing place. I definitely grew so much as a person. And I think it's like mine think alike, in the sense that there's so many smart people there and they kind of work together and, we bounce ideas across each other.
And your background is genetics. That's what you study?
Yeah, study genetics.
Yeah. Tell me why. How did you even get into that?
I just found it interesting. I think genetics is and was the future. I think we're kind of working out that personalized medicine is so important. And when you actually understand someone's genome, how their DNA actually works and the infrastructure of their body, there's so many things that we can actually cure. And definitely with AI, that's going to become so much easier.
Yeah. Did you do a lot of research in drug discovery, doing things like that with genome, or?
No, unfortunately, I didn't. So I did my master's thesis on how people with chronic illness use social media. And that was more of a computer science approach. So I kind of look into the maths behind it. But then I did some research on something really boring, but reclassifying a type of DNA, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Did your time at Oxford guide you to where you were today? Are there a lot of entrepreneurs that come out of Oxford, first of all, or?
So not many entrepreneurs. I think in the UK, we're kind of very research focused, and kind of that's a nice thing about here is there's so many startup founders and you kind of feel at home. In my course, I was the only one. And in fact, most people went on to do research and PhDs in particular, but definitely Oxford helped me so much. At Oxford, I was part of the finance fund. I ran the Oxford College Ball, which was a lot of fun. That was 6 months of planning. I was the student rep for my program. I helped out with a few other societies, and I really grew as a person, became like multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I found that I didn't like anything that much. And how about if I use all the skills I gained in Oxford to use it for my benefit?
Got it. And then you were building community for chronic illness because you had one, and you were doing this at Oxford too.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was like a natural mutation of that project that you were running. Was it a company at first, or was it just like a group chat or something like that?
So again, like speak to your users, we kind of looked at the YC playbook, and at the time we weren't extremely business focused. So we kind of just wanted to do it for fun. We knew it was important. We knew it's impactful, and we just targeted Reddit subreddits, and we spoke to maybe 1,000 people in these communities, and we took maybe a few hundred of them and put them on our platform, and they were connected using AI. I think it was quite successful, but it's sort of like when you find your first match, that's like the best match you can get. And the second, third, and fourth one kind of become less so, mainly because of network effects. We didn't have that many people on our platform. So every single match that comes would be worse than the first one. And when people got matched, they went off a platform. So we knew that lived experience was important.
Okay.
But, let's create a platform where people use and speak to them. Maybe an AI that's also like offers 24/7 support. People didn't like the inactivity, time zone issues. People wanted that then and then support. But we also realized the community is also important. So we offer group chats, private chats, and a feed like Reddit on our.
Yeah. When I was thinking of our idea, the first thing that came to mind is like addiction, right? Like AA is you'd hear like trying to help people quit drinking. There's like a bunch of other communities like that as well. It's very in-person heavy. For chronic illnesses, I guess it's not as in-person heavy. Like people want to, suffer in silence maybe. Do you guys plan on going into the addiction space at some point? Or do you think it's like two very separate things?
I think currently no. I think we've chosen this niche on purpose so we understand it the most. And addiction could be classed as a chronic disease of the mind, right? So it's definitely something that we could target. I know Sunflower, who's a YC company from last year, do it really well, and their team is amazing. But I think right now we've chosen a niche. I think we think it's big enough, and we understand it, I think, the most in the world.
Yeah. And how big is the chronic illness space? Like how many people have chronic illness?
So 2 billion people have some form of chronic illness. It might be diabetes or obesity, like you said, but people who have like severe chronic diseases that affect them daily is classed around 1 billion.
Okay.
So a lot higher than people expect.
And then is there a path to a cure when you get chronic disease? Like, people got obesity was a chronic disease, and now you've got Ozempic. That's like a permanent cure. And do you think there'll be less and less chronic illnesses as we get cures, or is it always going to be a thing?
I mean, 100%. I think so many diseases are classed as chronic pain. Like 200 million people have chronic pain effectively, if not more. And kind of what does that mean, like chronic pain? And I think as we learn genetics of how the architecture of the body causes these diseases, then we can kind of go for the root cause of the problem. The problem with medicine nowadays, it kind of is symptomatic. So we target the symptoms. They're in pain, we give them painkillers. But why are they in pain, and how can we fix it? So as time goes on, chronic diseases will hopefully exist less and less. We're really starting to see that.
Gotcha. You told me that you are the technical founder, but you did genetics in school. Like, where'd you learn how to code? Are you like a Cloud Code kid, or?
I mean, I think who doesn't use Claude Code nowadays? If you don't use it, you're not that productive. But no, I've been coding since I was younger. I built small games. I actually was working on building a cryptocurrency to sell something completely different, but to sell marijuana. And genetics is very data science heavy. So there's a lot of parallels between what I'm doing now and what I did previously. I've been coding in the last 4 years at Oxford and UCL. Yeah, kind of haven't stopped.
Gotcha. Do you think it's like San Francisco wisdom, Silicon Valley wisdom is always like find a co-founder that is very complementary to your skills, right? Like you code, he does marketing. Doc Twitch, we're not like that. We're like two very similar backgrounds. We're both technical. We both didn't know how to do marketing, but now we're both experts. We can fill in one another's spots. We can like move around, swap places as frequently as we find fit. And I think personally, that's a better model. A lot of people out there say, no, you need a tech guy you need a sales guy that does sales but can't touch the tech. What's your experience? Like, do you wish you could do all the TikTok stuff and have your co-founder do some of the coding, or are you guys happy having very like segregated tasks?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's like a complete like split. We definitely do help each other. And I think it's really important as a person who's doing the technical stuff to truly understand what people want, because, you know, if you're just being relayed information from your friend or your business partner, you're saying, do this, do that, and you don't really know why, then it's kind of difficult as technical founder of like what to do. Likewise, if I'm, you know, we need to both understand how the product works, how it functions from a technical side. And Isaac, my co-founder, is technical, and we definitely do work on the front end together. But like having that split is easier, in my opinion, just because, you know, you don't have to stop start. You know, you're working on a project, you get it from A to B. But I think definitely don't do 100% of the work. Split it up, because you need to learn how the other side functions, because then you work in harmony and not in parallel. So I think what you do is great.
Yeah.
Kind of like the postdoc CEO, CTO story, right? Where they just randomly swapped 1 week because they liked one guy liked the technical side more than the marketing, let's say.
You know, that's exactly what my co-founder and I did. Like both of us code, but we have different languages, right? I used to do top of funnel growth. So, you know, dealing with all of our content creator, creating all the code that, you know, scrapes videos, figures out what goes viral, like the technical stuff we needed for that, I did. And then Maurice did everything that we needed to convert folks. Like once my engine brought people to him, his job was taking the leads, phone numbers, and emails. That was my job to deliver to him. You built everything he needed to convert them. All the AI was on his plate. All the conversations were on his plate. Dealing with clinics, all the like clinic to clinic payment systems was on his plate. And one day we woke up and we're like, we should swap.
Yeah.
It took us a week to do the transition, but now he's fully on the marketing side, top of funnel. I'm doing all of the conversion side, right? Which is kind of cool. And I think every, you know, maybe 6 months we'll probably swap again, because you run out of good ideas. It's, you know, at some point you're gonna get used to how you're working. You don't see all the ways you can scale and improve, but someone sitting right next to you who's frustrated you're not converting enough will have all of the ideas to come in and like take your spot and be creative with the work, which is awesome.
100%. And then I guess you exist in harmony where like, you know, how both sides are working, and you know that learning curve where, you know, maybe some stuff you learn with the marketing side can be transferred to the technical side.
Yeah. One problem that I think we have is sometimes we disagree on things. It's like, hey, this is my domain. This is how I want to do it. But since he's technical, he has opinions too. And we'll like spend, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes arguing about something that in the grand scheme of things don't really matter. Do you guys run into that where you're bickering over tiny things because both of you guys understand the system very well?
I would say generally no. I think we've been friends for ages. So sort of, we do kind of have similar minds. We think similar ways.
You guys agree a lot.
We agree a lot. Obviously, we have situations where we don't agree, but like, you know, we handle it a professional way. We actually have a code word now where like, you know, if we both are being like too stuck up, we say our code word, and then it kind of like loosens things, and then you can kind of go back to like square one and be like, okay, like, why do you want to do this? Why do I want to do this? And then, you know, every single time it's worked, we have a resolution, and yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, we have something similar where we give like, you know, how many fucks do you give? It's like from 1 to 10. It's very rare that both of us give 10 out of 10 fucks on the same topic. In fact, in our history, I've known Mercer for 8 years, 9 years. I don't think we've had a single time where we both were 10 out of 10 on things. We're either like 9-8 or we're like 9-1. You know, sometimes you're just arguing because you have a fragile ego and you don't want to lose, right? You might care 1 out of 10 and you're still fighting to the death to get your way.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're pretty good at being honest, and if we don't care, just having the other person get their way.
I might use that technique. I might steal it from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. We also like prioritize speed. Like sometimes, in fact, when we started doing medical tourism, we did not start with hair transplants. And one day, you know, Maurice was like, oh, we should do something consumer, like something that can go viral on TikTok. I was very against it. He stayed up all night building a product, and when I woke up in the morning, I had no choice but to accept what he did, which is pretty cool. So speed is another way to, you know, who's willing to stay up all night and get their way versus the other.
Makes sense.
And there are times where I did that and he didn't as well. So it's pretty cool. Like this brotherhood that you are building with a co-founder is a pretty profound relationship, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
How did you meet your co-founder?
We just met in the first few days of university, and then we both like bonded over being ill.
Okay.
The whole time. So yeah, that was fun. And we kind of just stayed in the same friendship group.
Okay.
And then kind of both went different ways. We both started off at UCL, a school in London. And then I went to Oxford and he stayed at UCL. We kind of went different ways. And then we came back together at this one pitching event at Google where I was pitching the original AI social network. We had a really good time and I ended up winning. And then I was like to him, hey, do you want to join me? And he was like, yeah.
Yeah. And the rest is history.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. Okay. How long have you been in San Francisco? You just got here, right?
Yeah. So I've been back and forth the last few months, but I got here 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think you're going to stay here permanently?
I hope so. How you get an American visa accept me?
Aren't there like I don't know what it's called, but like a visa that the English speaking countries have with one another where you can just like come in, get some kind of visa, whenever it expires, you pay some fee and like get it renewed.
Maybe. I'm not too sure. I need to look into that.
What visa are you going after?
O1. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So you need media for that.
I guess so, yeah.
All right. Thank you to help out. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. If there's one shitty thing about our country, it's the visa situation. All right. Like there's so many smart people that should come here and stay here. We're making it hard for them to stay, which sucks.
Yeah.
How's the YC batch? Is there a lot of international people?
Yeah, there's a lot.
A lot.
Bunch, yeah.
Would you say majority or majority US?
I think 50-50.
Wow.
Yeah. I still think that the US is a really big startup ecosystem, but it's growing across the world. I mean, even my friends in the UK, they're extremely smart and they can't find any jobs. So, you know, rather than going the traditional route, now they're kind of targeting startups or entrepreneurships because they've never been told to do that previously. And they're doing it because of desperation rather than because they want it. But by doing so, some people become super successful in a space that they never imagined to be in.
And are you thinking of hiring these guys? Have you thought of that?
I'm thinking about it, yeah.
They're smart, but they're not smart enough.
They are smart. They are smart. But I'm happy with doing what they're doing.
Okay.
Maybe I might poach them later.
Yeah.
See their potential.
Yeah. That makes sense. You know, go make some mistakes and then maybe we'll hire.
Exactly. Come back in a year.
Damn, yeah. I remember being on the other side of this where, you know, there's a time where nothing we were building was working out. We're like, okay, we got to apply for jobs and we're trying to get hired at all of these startups. And that was harder than fucking getting revenue at your business. It's kind of a wild situation.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you ever had a traditional job?
Not really. I've done internships. I've been a waiter. I worked at a sports camp, whatever. But
no real 9 to 5.
No. And
you think that's a good thing for a startup founder? Or
I think it's complicated. I think there's this whole ethos behind, you know, not going to school is useless. And I think I grew so much as a person personally because I went to school and it's different for every person. But I think, you know, learning from a job could be useful. You know, having that regimented 9 to 5 learning from managers, learning from seniors definitely would have some use. But I think I've done a lot of learning on the job. And I think, you know, both are great. I'm happy I didn't go. I love working for myself. And I think I'm a lot more hardworking for myself than I would be an employer. Hopefully I never get employed by anyone, so I don't see it either.
Yeah. I'm a terrible employee. I used to work at Meta. I had a great team. I think the people were awesome. I think the project we were working on, the impact of it, I don't know how big it was. At least I didn't feel like it was that impactful. So it was kind of hard to like grind your hours out if you don't think that you're actually driving something right. So left for first chance I could. But I did have some training at a big company. But yeah, I mean, startup world is amazing. You know, it's a huge grind, but I feel like there's nothing better there's nothing else I'd rather be doing.
100%.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I don't know who it was. I saw this recently on YouTube, but some big tech influencer was like, you know, everyone needs to be doing a startup. Like everyone in the US should be doing a startup. There should be 1 million startups, 10 million, 100 million startups. And I truly believe it. I think it's a new world we're living in where anyone can build, you know, companies now using AI and it's only getting better. And there's so many problems still left to solve. You know, there's infinite problems. And so we can have infinite startups.
Yeah.
And, you know, who doesn't like working for themselves?
Yeah. I think people, at least my friends that don't want to do startup, it's mostly because like people care about other shit. It's hard for me to even imagine that. Like, I'm sure you're kind of the same thing, but you know, people want to have families. I don't know what the fuck that's like.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you want a family and if you're 22 and that's what you're like building towards, you can't think that and build a startup at the same time. Maybe some people can do it, but I feel like that's a very rare combination. You either have one or the other.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like the meme going around, the single until Series B.
Until Series B.
Yeah. But it's
hopefully
true.
not, but yeah.
Yeah. But maybe not Series B, but I do think it's hard, right? Your startup's like your baby. And like the more you spend away from it, either the more you miss it or the more you fall behind. You know, you kind of want your main focus to be there at all times. And I like some people can do it. I don't think I personally can. I think it's nice to, you know, go to bed and not have to worry about anything besides my startup.
Yeah. You know, I had a guest who's married and he was like, the amount of time single men think about wanting to date is about the same time married men think about their wives. So on one hand, you're lonely and you're thinking about stuff. The other hand, you actually have a companion with you that'll stick with you no matter what. And he was like, I think one is better than the other. And I kind of agree with him. If you can go from like 0 to getting married, it's the best. But it's the whole like middle situation where you're like dating, trying to find someone, wasting a lot of time going out on dates with people, you know, you're not going to, you know, that part is difficult. But if you can somehow
condense
that,
Make an agent for it.
Make an agent for it, find you the right person. That
Yeah.
it's probably better to be married as a startup founder than single as startup founder, I think.
Yeah.
Anyways, we've got 2 minutes. What are your thoughts on? I feel like that's a good spot to end it at. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can. That's quite funny. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in, man.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Yeah.